You may be seated. It is difficult for us to be here today, difficult to believe that Rhonda is gone, difficult that it is just several days after the loss of her mother, when so many of the family were gathered together in Memphis on the day that she died. But it is also comforting to be here today, to be surrounded by loved ones, those by blood, our family, and those by choice, our dear friends. People who are all here, who knew Rhonda, who are here to support her family, and to be able to recognize not only the loss that we feel, but also the love that she exuded throughout her life. We have the beautiful flowers here representing the brightness that she brought into this world. It's often a misconception that flowers aren't appropriate at Jewish funerals. If you go to Israel, every funeral has flowers. It was something that was done, I think, it's a way of making a distinction here in America, but the flowers, some people will say, well, the flowers are going to die. But that is also a recognition of what our lives are, that we have this opportunity for whatever period of time that we are here, and we never know just how long that will be. But we have the opportunity when we are here to add brightness into the world, to add color into the world, to help create joy in our world, and to help spread life into our world. And those are things that flowers also do. So we're pleased to have them here. And we're so grateful for all of you for being with us today. At times when we are at a loss for what are the appropriate words, our tradition teaches us to look to the book of Psalms. And so from Psalm 15, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagabro lecha, mi yishkon bahar kodshecha, holech tamim upoad tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavoho, lo ragal al lishono lo asal rehu ra, v'cherpa lo nasaha al krovoho, nivzeh be'enav nim'as ve'et irei Adonai yichabed, נשבע להרעה ולא ימיר, כספו לא נתן בנשק ושוחד על נקי לא לקח, עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם. A psalm for David, or of David, who can enter into God's holy sanctuary, who could merit a place in the presence of God, one who lives their life with integrity, who does what is right, who speaks the truth without deceit, and has no slander upon her tongue, who does no evil to others and does not mistreat a neighbor, who spurns a contemptible person but honors those who revere you, God, who would never retract a promise once made, even if it were to bring her harm, who would lend no money at unfair rates and accept no bribes against the innocent, one who makes these deeds their own, shall indeed stand firm forever. So pleased that we have Cantor Helsner with us this morning, our Cantor Emeritus, who has been there for so many of the events of the Sherrod family, and will sing for us Psalm 23.
Mizmor David, Adonai roi lo echsar, v'nodeshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi shoveim, ינכני ומגלי צדק למען שמו, גם כי אלך בגיא צלמוות לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. Shantecha hema yenachamuni, taharoch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai, tishanta vashemen roshi kosir vaya, ach tov chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai le'orech
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures and leads me beside the still waters. God restores my soul and guides me in straight paths for God's name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In order to fully appreciate the life of Rhonda, we want to call on those who knew her best. We're going to first call on Carly and then Joanne to share some words of remembrance.
My mom was an extraordinary woman, someone I can't quite capture in words. She was patient, caring, thoughtful, wise, and silly. She was a teacher that went above and beyond for her students, a friend that would listen to your thoughts and experiences in life, and the kind of person that would really help someone out should they need it. She loved helping people. My dad showed me a note that my mom wrote to him. She knew she was dying and wanted to leave a message to help him. I'd like to share that message with you. Among many things, my mom was a conversationalist. An understatement, I know. She knew just how to put things. And she liked things a very particular way, and I don't want to mess this up. So I'm just going to read exactly what she wrote. Sadness is necessary. Without sadness, there is no joy. If you never slide down into the pit, you never feel the relief or invigoration of climbing out of that hole. One must accept sadness so that there is light. Accept the reality that there are things in the world that one cannot control. But remember, not everything is out of control. There are choices. One can choose anger or calm, happy or sad, disruption or peace. And knowing when one can choose makes all the difference. Live and let live. But remember too, your choices are not for others. Your choices are your own. Thank you.
Hello. I look out at these faces and I see our community. I see our friends, our family, and I know that Mom loved all of you very much. We had many conversations that served for me as a guiding light to process and come through life's greatest challenges with clarity of vision and empathy that few could rarely it has happened, it does, but few could match. She was, as Carly said, an extraordinary woman. I have some of Mother's strength to lend for you today. I want to preface this by saying that when we were young, Mom made a point of reading her favorite story to all of us as children. We sat with her and she read first The Hobbit and then all of The Lord of the Rings. And while she was processing her battle with cancer, she found resolve in the words surrounding a triumph at the end of the Return of the King. Right beforehand, Aragorn gave a speech. And I'm going to read that to you. Sons of Gondor, of Rohan, my brothers, I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me. A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day. An hour of wolves and shattered shields when the age of men comes crashing down, but it is not this day. This day we fight. By all that you hold dear on this good earth, I bid you stand, men of the West. The second time, after Mother came out of remission and back into the cancer, after she had the time to mindfully reflect inside of the remission. What do I want to do with the time that I have? She did everything she dreamed of. She traveled to Europe. When Mom and Dad got married, they eloped. They went to Disney. And that's been a big signifier for the family. At one of the anniversaries of Grandma and Papa, he took us all to Disney. It was a deeply loved thing. But Mom always had wanted to have a wedding. And so for the 40th anniversary, many of you, so many of you, came to Mom and Dad's house in Pinehurst, North Carolina, a house that she and Dad painstakingly rebuilt with their hands, because Mom, she was a doer. She was a daughter of a builder, and she loved it. They all came out, and she had the wedding that she dreamed of, surrounded by the love of her friends and her family. When it came back, she spoke to me of the meaning of the words of Aragorn, and she said, "I'm a big nerd, so I want you to tell people about a word in Sindarin for me." That's the Elvish language that Tolkien created. And that word is Estel. It was the secret name given to Aragorn to protect him from Sauron. And there's another word in Sindarin for hope. This one also meant hope, but with an important clarifying connotation. This is hope that is not contingent on holding on to some amount of faith, but rather the conviction and the belief that good and the will of the Creator would ultimately triumph. So, that is the narrative that Mother used to fight. When she went and found out that the cancer was back, they told her she had 4 to 6 months, and Mother fought for 13 to move back home, to reconnect with this shul, to make sure she could reach out to her family and make all of her wishes known. She also curated the story of her life in her scrapbooks, written inside of it with her hand, that lovely handwriting that so many of you have seen in cards over the years. I'm sorry, I'll need just a moment before I can close. There is a concept underlying the theory of therapy. It's called terror management theory. The idea is that we all know that one day we too will die, and the way that we fight against that terror is by imbuing our lives with meaning, heart-forth meaning. In narrative therapy, there are many threads which exist in our lives. And in narrative therapy, that practice, one mindfully examines all of the available narratives and does not discard them, but chooses to give focus to that which will assure that you are well, that your relationships are as well as they may be, that they are protected. I would ask you not just to think of Mother's resilience in her fight, but to remember her as she wanted to be remembered, for the impact that she had in 18 years of teaching in Montgomery County on the lives of so many children, as well as those of her sons by other mothers, my other mothers are here as well. It means so much to have you here. We will be having Shiva at the house later. The details are available. Everyone is welcome to come and share memories of Mother. She wants her joy, her humor to be shared among everyone. Thank you for being here today.
We'll also now hear from her oldest brother, Irvin.
Well, I'd like to tell you something about Rhonda based on my mother. At my mother's funeral last week, before the ceremony, the rabbi asked me if Mom was a member of Hadassah. And I said, well, no. She had her own take on how to live her life. She loved playing mahjong and had a group of friends, people well known among the Jewish community. And for somewhere between 40 or 70 years, they all played mahjong together. And she and her friends reached out to the community through their relationships, all had happy and wonderful lives together, many friends. They were part of the synagogue that they belonged to, but they had their own sort of organization. They lived life happily. They pursued their loves, other friends. And I think that was an example of what Rhonda learned early in her life, because Mom was setting an example of what made her happy, what she loved doing. And I think that's exactly what Rhonda did. She took up the example, lived her life happily. I could tell you more, but I just wanted to convey an impression that I have about how Rhonda grew up and wanted to share that.
Thank you so much. To Irv and Minda, who I know isn't with us in person, but hopefully is able to be joining us on live stream. To Jerry and Charlie, to all of your families. To Stephen, to Joanne, and with Hillary and Isaac and Jordana, Carly and Rory, and in the back to Sabrina and Kat. To all who have gathered here, we want to express our deepest condolences. As I sat with Stephen and Joanne and Isaac and Jordana and Carly yesterday, I was struck by the exuberance with which they shared their stories of Rhonda. They talked about a loving mother, wife, sister, daughter, and aunt, and friend who was always there for people when they needed her. They spoke of her famous apple pie. Get back to that one. They shared the stories of her professional life and the impact that she had on all of her students. I learned of her skills in carpentry and house painting, and especially her joy in demolition with a sledgehammer. They showed me some of the many Hummel figurines that she had collected and the intricate boxes. They explained that she was both a woman who always had time to lend an empathetic ear and a woman who would begin giving orders of what to do the moment you walked in the house. In English, we will often refer to a person who takes interest in so many different areas as a Renaissance man or woman, and that would certainly be fitting. In Hebrew, that phrase is an Eshet Chayil. Eshet Chayil can be translated equally appropriately as a woman of strength, or perhaps the wife of a soldier. It is a poem that is found in the end of the book of Proverbs, said to be written by King Solomon. Some theorize that it is a general description of the ideal woman. Others say perhaps it was a eulogy for his own mother, Bathsheba, whose first husband had been a great soldier, Uriah, and the second, the mighty King David. But either way, it describes a woman who never sits around idly, who is always busy, preparing meals, engaging in business deals, taking care of the poor, who is wise, and whose tongue flows with kindness. It concludes with the words, "Give her the fruit of her hands, and she will be praised at the gates by her own deeds." Indeed, Rhonda Sherrod was a true Eshet Chayil. Rhonda was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1957 to Isidore and Rose Bilski, the fourth of 5 children, long the baby of the family until Charlie came along. She came from an industrious family who ran numerous businesses and were early adopters of what we call today vertical integration, going from running a hardware store to being a prominent builder and real estate developer in the area. Her Jewish community was an important part of that upbringing, going to the Baron Hirsch Synagogue, and as a teen she was active member of Feinbaum BBG, the girls' division of what is known as BBYO, which, by the way, I incidentally learned in between yesterday and today, that it was named, you probably know this, in memory of ESPN commentators Paul Feinbaum's father. Just an interesting note for those of us who are sports fans. She loved writing, was quite proud of the essay contest that she won. She enjoyed theater, including playing a role in the White Station High School production of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, but also going to theater as well whenever she could. Rhonda attended the University of Tennessee in Nashville, where she majored in secondary education. And among many other activities, she and her high school friend Barry Eisman were lifeguards. That turned out to be an important job for her, as it was there that she also met Stephen, a student 2 years younger than her, which he kept secret for a while. After graduation, Rhonda returned to Memphis and was the director of Cotton State's BBG, the Regional Confederation of BBG chapters, while she waited for Stephen to graduate. And when Stephen was accepted to Georgia Tech, they moved to Atlanta, but Rhonda was firm in her rule that she would not get married until Stephen had graduated and gotten a job. They were married in '83, and in 1985, Joanne was born. When Stephen was offered a job in Los Angeles, Rhonda dutifully followed along, but LA was not for her. She described it as a city having a liquor store on every corner. And so when a bank from Memphis called Stephen to offer him a job interview, and he had turned down that because he had work to do, she got on him right away to call them back and to get out there and do the interview, which he did, and they moved back. As I said, she was a woman of strength. Stephen got that job. They returned to Memphis, where Isaac was born. And a few years later, when Stephen saw a job advertised in the Wall Street Journal for a government position, he spoke to Rhonda about it and emphasized the fact that there was a large JCC in Rockville, Maryland, and so she was okay. They would move again. And Rockville was where they needed to be so they could be close to the Jewish community. Another move, another child. Soon after moving here, Carly was born. And it was in Rockville that here the family quickly joined Beth Tikva. Rhonda was active, baking chalot for Kiddush and teaching in our religious school program. All of the children celebrated their B'nai Mitzvah here, with Rabbi Gorin and Cantor Helsner officiating, after being tutored by their close friend and neighbor, Kate Janes Khan. And when Carly was old enough to start school, Rhonda got a job running the Kenwood Park after-school program at Rock Creek Valley Elementary. As with everything that she did throughout her life, she put her whole heart, her whole self into her work, even to the extent that one time when there was a snowstorm delaying a set of parents from being able to pick up their kids, she let the parents know, just come back to the house and I'll take them home with us. When Michael and Louise Mendelovitz, who are here, finally picked up Mark and Adam, having gotten through Washington traffic, they found them playing with Carly, Isaac, and Joanne, and from there, a lifelong intergenerational bond was built between these two families, one that continues well into this day, never missing a simcha or an opportunity to support one another when needed. Rhonda later got her master's in elementary education and, as we heard, served for 18 years as a teacher in Montgomery County Public Schools, teaching second and third grade students. And she had truly found her calling with this job. Creating characters such as Rufus P. Mathman Jones, she engaged her students with love and a great sense of play. She created multiplication competitions, behavioral reward systems that included picking out prizes from her store, the items that she brought with her own money from the dollar store for the kids to be able to buy for their good deeds. And she never missed an opportunity to teach. When one student asked her how old she was, after noticing her silvery hair, she told him that she was 365 years old. The child returned the next day telling her that parents had said that that was impossible. 365 is the number of days of the year. And she smiled contently, another lesson taught. And as the story with Michael and Louise demonstrated, and there are so many more, Rhonda made friends easily, and once she did, she kept them forever. Her friend Denny Hirsch wrote a note on the obituary page that was posted yesterday, saying that they met in second grade and she was one of her best friends throughout life, describing the two of them and Barry Eisman as the three musketeers, always at each other's houses, basement parties, overnights with lots of laughter, and so much more. And she also continued to make friends later in life, such as the couple that she and Stephen made after retiring on a vacation in Miami. What began as an elevator conversation soon led to going on some excursions together during that trip and eventually going to London, where the couple lived and hosted them for a trip. And as much as she loved all of her friends, her greatest love was for her family members. She maintained as close relations as she could with her siblings, Irvin and Minda, Jerry and Charlie and their families, and was a beloved aunt to their children. A devoted mother, as we have heard, for Joanne and Isaac and Carly. She was fun and silly and always made the most of every holiday in the home, whether it was American or Jewish, decorating the house, finding a costume, making the appropriate foods, gathering together friends and family. But she was also someone who they knew that they could turn to for sage advice or just a listening ear. And importantly, she knew how to distinguish between those two and which was needed and which was wanted at a particular moment. She was quick to welcome in Jordana and Rory. She and Stephen built a beautiful life together over these past 42 years. As we heard, it began eloping at Disney World, but celebrated again at that 40th anniversary. And of course, these last several years, she's absolutely loved being a bubby to Sabrina and Kat. Now, I had mentioned before the apple pie. And I think as I listened to the stories, this apple pie was more than just a dish that she made. It symbolized in many ways her relationship to family. A Latvian recipe that she had learned from her paternal grandmother. Her grandmother had always baked this pie whenever she would come to see her dad, who loved it. And it was not a recipe, apparently, that could be written. Someone tried and it didn't work. You had to just know from the feel of the dough that it was at the right consistency, because weather conditions might change, and altitudes, and so you would never know what the dough would be like just by measuring. It was only by the feel. The filling, however, was canned apples, because her grandmother had said, too much work to make their own and tastes the same anyway. So Rhonda learned these lessons at her side, and soon her dad often found himself enjoying 2 apple pies at every event. And there was not a family celebration, except perhaps Pesach, that didn't include that apple pie. And Rhonda made sure that she taught Carly to make it as well, so that the tradition can continue. And it will be upon Carly to teach it to Kat and to Sabrina. But that was Rhonda in so many ways. Always thoughtful of others, always planning, thinking ahead, having fun, knowing what others needed, and making sure that they would have it. I mentioned before the story of Eshet Chayil. It's possible as well, according to some interpretations, that it might not have been his mother that Solomon was speaking about, but his great-great-grandmother, the prophet Ruth. And as I listened to the stories yesterday, and I thought about the way that Rhonda linked together from her grandmother down to Carly, and God willing to Carly's daughters and any other grandchildren that may come, it struck me that in this way as well, she was that Eshet Chayil. As we heard throughout the fight of cancer, she would quote from the Tolkien character Aragorn, "Someday we all must die, but today is not that day." And for as long as she possibly could, Rhonda lived by that line until this week, when indeed that day came. None of us know when that day will come for us, but all of us can learn from Rhonda that until it does, we must live our lives to the fullest, sharing together our love, our joy, our sorrows, and our hardships. Rhonda loved people. She loved life. She was beloved by all and will most certainly be dearly missed by everyone who had the privilege to know her.
אשת חיל ימצא ורחוק מפניני מכרה פתח בלב בעלה ושלל לא יחסר במעלת הוא טוב לא רע כל ימי חייה דרשה צמר ופשתים וטס בחפץ כפיה. שקר החן והבל היופי אישה יראת אדוני היא תתהלל תנו לה מפרי ידיה והללוה ושרים מעשיה.
Thank you, Cantor, for giving voice to those words from the book of Proverbs, Eshet Chayil. In a few moments, we will rise to recite the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. Following that, we will ask the pallbearers to come forward and then make our way, following behind the family, out to the parking lot, and then those who will be joining together to go over to Judean Memorial Gardens will get a placard for their car and turn on your flashing lights. And following the burial, the family welcomes people back to their home. Tomorrow evening, after Shabbat at 7 o'clock, there will be a gathering here at Tikvat Israel. We will recite the evening prayer service and Havdalah, making the distinction between Shabbat and the rest of the week, and then have opportunities to continue to share memories and thoughts and condolences to the family. I'd ask that you please rise.
Il Malei Rachamim shochen במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת רזל שרה בת איסר פסח ורחל שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. אנא בעל הרחמים הסיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים ותצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותעשה שלום על משכבה ונאמר
Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure. To the soul of Rezel Sarah Bat Isar Pesach Barochel Rhonda Sherrod, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say,
Amen.
Amen.
Testing, testing.